All right, today we're talking with Navy veteran Zac Staples, CEO of Fathom 5. Zac, welcome to the show. You guys are doing some crazy, impressive stuff there with AI and all that. But before we get to talking about all that, take us back. Tell us what you did in the Navy.
Oh, yeah. Thanks. First off, it's great to be here. And thank you for what you're doing, kind of spotlighting different entrepreneurial journeys. I think, laying the runway for other people to follow is just super important. So we'll get more into that. But yeah, so for my background, I was a surface warfare officer, Naval Academy guy, got out. Got sent up to Newport for baby swaths back in the day, and ended up doing two cruisers, two destroyers, coastal marine squadron, a few other things. But I think my journey where like started before that, and I jokingly tell people that when I was 10 years old, my best friend and I we both got Commodore 64 computers.
I
And,
remember those.
and yeah, you remember that?
Yep,
You
I
can
do.
actually see them in Silicon Valley at the San Jose. They have like a museum of computer history, and it's a cool museum. You can go see one still.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so he got it, and kind of his natural inclination of what he wanted to do was to kind of write a program, a game in BASIC, 10-year-old kind of thing to do with a new computer. And
Yep.
for whatever reason, like I got my first computer, and the number one thing, most natural thing for me to figure out to do was to write a program to break his computer. And and so I don't know, I was born to cyber, I guess. So,
Before the
you know,
before the
and this,
concept of even viruses were around, you were trying to come up with a virus.
yeah, like early days, I had no idea what that would mean. And for the record, I did not succeed at that at 10. But I always had it in my mind, really, to can you do something creative with these machines, like other than their intended purpose, which at the time was kind of word processing and in spreadsheets and everything, right? And so I think at the fundamental nature of like what a hacker is, it is trying to find a creative expression in the medium of in computer science other than kind of the business purpose for which these machines were originally intended.
Mhm.
And when that creativity has worn a dark mask, it has revealed a lot of unfortunate unintended side effects of a lack of protection and guardrails against things. But on the same on the bio thing, I was on a bunch of great ships. I did a lot of creative computer things in the early days of putting networks and LANs on ships. And in 2007, we had a bunch of Americans in Iraq and Afghanistan getting blown up by roadside bombs.
Yeah.
And the call went out looking for people who wanted to be counter-IED electronic warfare officers, and I volunteered for that.
Yeah.
I had kind of itching for an electronic fight my whole life. When I got out of the Naval Academy, you had to go be a cryptologist if you wanted to do cyber, and I had no interest in being a crypty. I was going to be a warfighter, and so
Yeah.
I drove ships and was on ships for 10 years and loved it. But then when this opportunity in my mind came up for me to do exactly what I love and protect and serve my fellow brothers and sisters in arms, I was all in. And so for the last probably half of my career, although I was still kind of by designator surface warfare officer, I
Mhm.
was doing cyber and electronic warfare until it just kind of became crystal clear, like for all of us at one point or another, it's time to get out and go do something else.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. My best friend growing up, Tim, he had a TSR 80 from Radio Shack, and we had an Osborne computer. It was one of the first portable computers, but it was about the size
Yeah.
of a suitcase in the front, folded out with a keyboard in it. So, and I remember when we went from a 92K floppy, we got it upgraded to double density, so it was 180K floppy. No hard drive.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The history of computing is just so rich with great personalities. And I'm got to serve the last 4 years of my career at the Naval Postgraduate School. And kind of in a little known fact, the IEEE has a Lifetime Achievement Award for the electrical or electrical and computer engineers that make the most significant contributions in various fields of the discipline. And they ultimately gave the first operating system for a personal computer award to a guy named Gary Kildall, who was a Naval Postgraduate School professor.
Huh.
And when I came back and eventually was the assistant chair for the EE department at NPS, and I got to go stand in for the school when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award. And so cool because all of the early folks from Silicon Valley, I could say the Silicon Valley OGs, kind of were all there
Yeah.
from early Intel, early HP, even some of the early semiconductor guys before that. And so that's actually what kind of set me on my next journey was those sorts of conversations with the original Silicon Valley founders.
Nice. Yeah. I got lucky and was able to go to 6 weeks at the Naval Postgraduate School where I went to Aviation Safety Officer School.
Oh, sure.
They've
Yeah.
since moved it to Pensacola, I think, but wow, just a gorgeous place up there in Monterey. But hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Sure.
All right, we're back talking with Navy veteran Zac Staples, CEO of Fathom 5. So, Zac, great intro about what you did in the Navy and everything, history of computers and all that. So, you're getting out of the Navy at this point. What was your transition like?
Yeah. Yeah, great question. One thing is I had a lot of clarity about the nature of my work. I was inspired and honored to have a self-employed mother who raised all four of us as kind of an entrepreneur herself, and so I was always inspired to follow in her first footsteps some way in entrepreneurship. Um, and so having my last tour at NPS in Monterey, like we talked a little bit about a minute ago,
Mm-hmm.
I had a great opportunity to talk to, as I mentioned, through lots of different venues, early Silicon Valley founders
Mm-hmm.
and early Silicon Valley technologists. And what I realized that a lot of people don't realize is how intimately involved the Department of Defense was in the launch of what we now call in Silicon Valley, where there is a lot less defense involvement. But
Yeah.
the Department of Defense was the number one buyer of semiconductors and electronics and products out of the Silicon Valley up through the mid 80s.
Huh.
And so when you go back and you look at the original way to start a tech company and you follow in the footsteps of Hewlett Packard or Intel or Fairchild Semiconductor or Applied Materials, you see that a close supportive relationship with defense was instrumental to their growth. Now, I'll be back up in Silicon Valley again tomorrow, going to a quantum computing conference, right? If you listen in the break rooms of those conferences, very few people will say the way you start a tech company is with a defense focus.
Yeah.
And so, it's go get VC, it's do something else, right? But having that insight made it crystal clear for me that building an entrepreneurial tech company with a defense oriented thesis wasn't a new idea. It was an old idea made new. And so when I got out and launched Fathom 5, we very intentionally set out to build a modern exponential growth technology company in the best vein of Silicon Valley or Austin startups.
Mm-hmm.
But we said our early customer base and our early product vision is going to be around solving vital national security problems.
Interesting. Yeah. And so, how were you able to break into all that? Just somebody just coming out of the Navy.
Yeah, so it's ironic, right? You serve a long time in the Navy or the Marine Corps like you did, and you see a lot of problems. Not the least of which is you're a Cobra pilot, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, how often did they update the technology on the Cobra?
Painstakingly slow. Yes.
Yeah, painstakingly slow, right?
By the
And
time it
so
made it through the acquisitions process and everything else, it was almost old technology by then. That's how quick technology works.
that's exactly right. And so I think America's warfighters deserve better. Just if we focus on the men and women that are in active duty, they deserve better. Um, but even more broadly than that, I wonder if we can win a peer level competition if we can't deliver technology to the warfighter at what I call the pace of relevance.
Mm-hmm.
And so, my way to break in was to frankly go after the core problem and start to ask, what are the actual blockers to velocity that prevent us from delivering meaningful technology to the warfighter at the pace of relevance, at the point of need, at the tactical edge? And you're right, you hit on one. There are some acquisition challenges to that.
Yeah.
There are also cybersecurity approval challenges to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then there's certification challenges, like how do we prove that something we build quickly and we find a way to have high rigor in cybersecurity authorization still meets the warfighter need through some certification process. You have acquisition, cyber authorization, and mission certification requirements, all of which iterate on the pace of years, and they need to iterate on the pace of weeks for delivery. And so we built a company that found a couple toeholds in some things where we could prove that we could deliver at the pace of velocity for the warfighter. And success breeds follow-on success, right? And so we've been able to just kind of snowball that into a growing, thriving company now, 7 years in.
Wow. Um, and are you in Texas?
We are, yeah. So we're based out of Austin, Texas. We've got the majority of the team in Austin, and we've got a small team in I call it Team Yellowstone. They're in Cody, Wyoming, kind of right on the eastern entrance to the park. And then
Yeah.
we've got another small team in DC.
Okay. Nothing in Silicon Valley.
Nope. We found that there are enough people leaving San Francisco that we can hire them to Austin.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Well,
There's a
uh,
lot of tech talent leaving San Francisco
yeah.
and New York, Boston, and the Texas economy is a good landing spot for a lot of those people.
Yeah. It's gotten crazy.
Sure.
We left Kansas City and escaped to Florida 3 years ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
really get all that. Okay. So let's talk about Fathom 5
Yeah,
specifically. So are you able to explain to us exactly what you're doing with AI technology in
absolutely.
this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. When people ask me that on the airplane, I tell them we work at the intersection of AI and grease. So we're building artificial intelligence to make military machines run better. Um, and more specifically in that, we build infrastructure. So when you think about um, the runtime environment for artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, others, all runs in big data centers, and you access it over the internet.
Hmm.
There's a decent amount of AI, particularly with some of Apple's new releases, that runs on your mobile phone handset
Yeah.
and has a hybrid relationship with the cloud, usually in that context. Um, but if you're going to write AI that runs on a warship or a submarine or a jet or a Cobra, it needs to run disconnected from the internet.
Yeah.
And the problem specifically that we're solving is that the way AI runs in the cloud is pretty standardized. You package the algorithms up into containers, you run those containers with an orchestrator that spins them up on virtual machines in the cloud. And so it's very easy now to rapidly develop artificial intelligence software because all of the architecture for that software follows a pretty standard pattern.
Hmm.
But then if you go look at the software architecture for our tactical systems across the board, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they're all equally unique, special snowflakes.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to think about this pipeline that generates very good algorithms doesn't have a consistent, repeatable way to run at the tactical edge, the way it runs on your phone or in the cloud. And so what Fathom 5 is doing specifically is we're building AI infrastructure that replicates that cloud environment so that you can have that what I call that virtuous loop of writing a model that makes a good prediction, testing it on a warship, getting it back into the cloud, retuning it based off those the performance that you saw, and getting it right back onto a warship. And
Hmm.
because we focus so heavily on the infrastructure for that, we had the unique distinction of being the first company to actually put artificial intelligence in the program of record, not in a demo or a pilot, but actually in the program of record on a warship. And we're trying now to find a bunch more algorithm developers to come ride the platform.
Really? And so
Yeah.
how are you using AI on Navy ships?
Yeah, that's a great question. So real simply, um, the Navy has a maintenance plan that is mostly built around intervals. Every 3,000 hours, change the filter in this thing. Every 600 runtime hours, water wash down that gas turbine, et cetera. Um, we're helping them move to a condition-based maintenance philosophy so that looking at vibes, temperatures, differential pressures, we have analytics that are predicting the health of the machine into the future
Hmm.
and saying you need to do this maintenance now to ensure your mission readiness over a longer term horizon than if you just let it, you know, go on this interval schedule.
You're able to adequately pull data from enough locations to, because like in aviation, yeah, the
Yeah.
same thing. Like you have the 100-hour inspection and all these other things.
Yep.
We're going to pull the aircraft apart and go in and look at things or automatically replace things before they ever get close to breaking, because you can't afford for something to wear out and actually break when you're in flight.
That's right. So let's take that example. For example, let's do so as a SWO, I had plenty of helicopters on my cruisers, right? One of those big aviation maintenances when we go break down the whole rotor head,
Mm-hmm.
and we do that big, and then the aircraft goes down for a week, a month or so while we do that one big planned maintenance during in the middle of a deployment, right?
Yep.
That interval schedule is built around a bunch of assumptions about operating conditions. So when you're operating the sand, you're wearing a lot harder on that thing than when you're operating in some high altitude place with absolutely no particulates in the air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they built that interval schedule around a worst case scenario for maintenance. And so we take their airplanes down all the time and we take shipboard equipment down all the time just because we hit the hourly limit, but not because we really need to do it. And then there's the condition where the hourly limit is set too long and we're in an adverse environment and we should have done it quicker. Well, if we actually measure the indicators of that failure, so in a you know in a air in a rotor as bearings start to go or there's dust or particulate in the bearing, you're going to get a different vibration pattern. And AI can pick that stuff up. We can measure startup times, and as an engine starts to take a little bit longer to start up, we can detect some of the things about what's not why it's not start firing right up at like it would right after a tune-up. And so by measuring the actual condition of the equipment, the military has the opportunity to have a bump in readiness, which we definitely need, um, and is a great, what I consider low risk way for artificial intelligence to get out and into the fleet, um, while we figure out how to do the V and V on more complicated type decisions about engagement support.
Are you using, I mean, most of us know AI as
Yeah,
basically chat GPT, right?
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So like, are you using chat GPT in many ways, or are we talking a whole different set
Yeah,
of?
that's a great question. So ChatGPT is the uh, ChatGPT is the derivative of a lot of work, kind of some breakthroughs in artificial intelligence that happened back in 2012 when we were
Mhm.
able to start doing deep learning and deep nets. And ChatGPT is dependent on very sophisticated algorithms with a lot of support and runtime. We're not there yet, and we don't need to be. There are other sorts of AI algorithms that can look at um, categorization. So if you go back kind of right before ChatGPT, there were all sorts of algorithms, particularly like on our kids' phones, right? For Snapchat, they could take a picture and alter it. They could find your face. They could find your friends and
Yeah.
in your things. So that's all categorization, right? That's saying, hey, this is Joe. This is probably Joe's friend, right? Or could look at a picture and say, okay, that's definitely a dog. That is a hot dog, right? And they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
So tons of what we do looking at a piece of equipment is saying, oh, that's a bearing vibration, or that's a normal running motor. That's an electrical that is an electrical in failure, electrical spike failure. So we're using a little bit earlier generation AI that mostly does categorization. So it has less uh, resources to put on the edge, so we can actually get it out and start using it. So we don't have to have Chat GPT to do some really insightful, important things around the maintenance question.
Yeah. Because, you spent a lifetime, if you've spent a lifetime like in aviation or something
Yeah,
specific where, like, like when I hopped in a Cobra, like pretty much if there was something wrong with it, I would know it. Like
that's right.
it was an intuition. Like you just, from all the years of experience, and you had maintenance guys that just, they knew the thing like the back of their hand. Like one little thing, oh, hold on. And then, believe it or not, sometimes it was hitting or tapping onto something, or tapping on a solenoid or whatever for the start.
Yeah.
But it took, it took almost a whole career to gather that level of knowledge, to be able to pull off some of those things, or think you break down on a cross country or whatever. You're like, yeah, I know what we can do.
That's
Um,
right.
and then people leave, and that knowledge is gone, and the next new guy has to pick it up from scratch almost. And you try to put it in books, you put it in manuals, you try to infuse it in the training program, but it's nothing like the operational experience of it all, to have seen it and done it.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on two fundamental principles in our approach. One is we're not trying to replace the human in any way, shape, or form. What we're trying to do is support diagnostics, advanced diagnostics, help maintainers direct their search, and as our analytics, and frankly the analytics that run on our platform. So to be clear, and this is I think an important opportunity, is Fathom 5 builds the platform and tests and evaluate analytics. So I am, and for everybody who's listening, we are looking for analytics providers to run AI algorithms on the Navy's platform. And we will help you get onboarded from a software engineering perspective to do that. But
Well,
we are of the firm belief that there is no single firm, not Fathom 5 and not anybody else, who will have the best maintenance prediction solution for every piece of equipment in the inventory. What we're doing is building a platform that enables all of those model and algorithm developers to have a place to sell a license for their software so
mhm.
that they can get evaluated head to head against others and allow kind of an innovation ecosystem to rise.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So how do we find out more information about Fathom 5 if we're interested?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is just follow Fathom 5 on LinkedIn. And, I think we have a lot of interesting things coming up. And with their both opportunities for vets for jobs, calls for collaborators to build algorithms for the platform, where we're going to be if you just want to walk up and see it at a conference. But yeah, that's definitely the best way is follow us on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, Zac, do you want to give you the last word? If you're talking to somebody that's still in the military looking to get out, or somebody got out recently, maybe didn't like where they landed, tired of the job, what kind of advice would you have for them, in regards to starting your own business and entrepreneurship?
Two things. And I can't say for sure what'll work best for anybody, but I'll tell you the things that I had and didn't realize they were such assets getting out. The first is I retired very much like you, Joe, and then started a business. And I think my wife had tolerance for a one shot. There's no way I was going to be a serial entrepreneur, right? Where I got to
Yeah.
fail 3 or 4 times, right? So um, I went into this like any other mission. And just like I did any other mission plan, I'm going to get up early. I'm going to be first in the office. I'm going to work long days
Mhm.
and I'm going to make this work. And it turns out that is actually not a universally held like work ethic in the tech community.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I had the pleasure of launching Fathom 5 out of an accelerator in Austin called Capital Factory.
Oh, cool.
And I can unequivocally tell you, I was usually 99% of the time, I was the first person in my, seat when it was a company of one, and I was the last one out. And I was working typical kind of military officer, high intensity, crisis action planning type role. And first and foremost, the work ethic we learned as military leaders and officers and senior enlisted translates exceptionally well and earned the trust of everybody I encounter with business because of just those basic skills.
Mhm.
And the second thing is, particularly in the tech world, there have been several. There it is a good opportunity to start a defense innovation focused company. I think I pioneered this along with a half dozen others, and now we're seeing um, Palantir and others like reach billion-dollar status. So there is investment money for defense innovation startups, and there have been some, other than successful attempts at this that were too focused around I would say, the Silicon Valley ethos of go fast, break things, and
Mhm.
they didn't have enough context of the problem. So defense innovators that, as you say, a lifetime experience in a particular area, they know the problem deeply, coupled with a strong work ethic and a good financing environment for defense innovation tech companies, it is a great time to go start a company and do something important for our nation.
Awesome. Sage advice. All right, Zach. Well, I appreciate you sharing your entrepreneurial success story, and check back in a year or so and see how you're doing. Maybe get you back on the show and
I
good
love it.
good info. Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. All right. These two veterans are Oscar Mike.